The mountains do not care about your plans. They do not care about your prayers. And they certainly do not care about your children. In the Comanche Peak wilderness of Colorado, the granite peaks stand like ancient, indifferent sentinels, watching the tiny, fleshy things that crawl across their skin. On October 2nd, 1999, the air held a bite that whispered of the coming winter. The sky was a flat, bruised, gray, and the wind had a way of stealing the breath right out of your lungs. A group of 11 people, mostly strangers, brought together by a shared faith, set out onto the Big Thompson Canyon Trail. They were looking for fellowship. But the wilderness was looking for something else. Among them was a 6-year-old boy named Jaryd Atadero. He was a burst of life in a landscape that felt increasingly dead. He wore a bright red pullover, a beacon of heat in a world of cold stone and dark pine. He was energetic, running ahead, doubling back, his laughter echoing off the canyon walls. But there is a specific kind of silence in these woods, a silence that feels heavy, like it is pressing against your eardrums. It is the silence of a predator holding its breath. Jaryd did not notice it. Children never do. They trust the world too much. They think the rustle in the leaves is just the wind, and the shadow behind the tree is just a trick of the light. The trail wound upward, a narrow ribbon of dirt and rock flanked by dense timber and steep drop-offs. The Big Thompson River roared below, a churning throat of white water and jagged rocks. Jaryd was about 100 feet ahead of the main group. He was within earshot, within sight, until he was not. He stopped to ask 2 hikers if there were any bears in the area. They told him no, and he bounded off toward a bend in the trail. He was looking for fishermen he claimed to see further up the slope, but there were no fishermen recorded in that area that day. There was only the shimmering heat off the rocks and the deep, devouring shadows of the spruce trees. When the rest of the group rounded that same bend, less than 60 seconds later, the trail was empty. The world had simply opened up and swallowed a 40-pound boy in the time it takes to tie a shoelace. No scream, no sound of a struggle, no frantic scrambling of feet on the loose scree. Just the wind, and the sudden, sickening realization that the mountain had taken its toll. This is how it starts. In a missing 411 case, the transition from presence to absence is instantaneous. It is as if the person never existed at all. The air itself feels thinner, as if the space Jaryd occupied had been vacuumed out of reality. The group began to call his name. Jaryd. Jaryd. Their voices were thin and high, sounding pathetic against the vastness of the canyon. The sound did not seem to carry. It hit the trees and fell flat, as if the forest itself was absorbing the vibrations. They searched the immediate area, checking behind boulders and peering into the thick brush. Nothing. The dry pine needles on the ground were undisturbed. There were no scuff marks, no broken branches, no signs of a child being dragged away by a mountain lion or a bear. It was as if he had been plucked straight up into the gray sky. The sun began to slide toward the peaks, and the warmth of the day evaporated, replaced by a cold that felt like a physical threat. As the sun began to dip behind the jagged horizon, the temperature plummeted toward the freezing mark. In the high country, the cold is a physical weight. By the time the first search and rescue teams arrived, the shadows were long and distorted, stretching across the trail like reaching fingers. They brought in the dogs, the elite bloodhounds that can track a scent through fire and rain. These animals are trained to find the living and the dead, their noses capable of detecting a single molecule of human skin. But when the dogs reached the spot where Jaryd was last seen, they did something that chilled the handlers to the bone. They did not bark. They did not pull on their leashes with the excitement of a fresh trail. They sat down, and they whimpered. They looked into the dark timber with a primal fear, their hackles raised, refusing to move an inch further. Their handlers, men who had spent decades in the backcountry, felt a sudden, inexplicable sense of dread. It was the feeling of being hunted, the feeling that something was watching them from the canopy, something that did not have a scent the dogs recognized as natural. The wilderness was no longer a place of recreation. It was a cathedral of bone. The searchers felt it too. That prickle on the back of the neck that makes you want to look behind you. The sensation of being watched by something that was not quite there. Every time a flashlight beam swept across the trees, there was a sense of movement in the periphery, a shimmering in the air, like heat rising off a highway in July. It was an optical glitch, a distortion that made the bark of the trees seem to ripple and flow like liquid. Some called it exhaustion or the play of shadows. Others knew better. There are things in these mountains that have learned to look like nothing at all. They are the masters of the Glimmer, a predatory camouflage that turns a monster into a ghost. Days turned into a week. Over 500 people swarmed the mountain. Specialized mountain rescue teams rappelled down the cliffs. Divers searched the freezing pools of the Big Thompson River. Helicopters with infrared sensors buzzed overhead, their thermal cameras searching for a heat signature in the freezing terrain. They found deer. They found coyotes. They found the residual heat of campfires. But they found nothing of Jaryd. Not a single glowing dot that resembled a child. Jaryd Atadero was gone. It was as if he had stepped through a door in the air and the door had locked behind him. The official theory was that he had fallen into the river or been taken by a mountain lion. But the mountain lion theory had a massive hole in it. Mountain lions are messy. They leave tracks. They leave blood. They leave a trail of carnage that a trained dog can follow for miles. And the river was shallow in that section. They searched every inch of it with poles and cameras. Jaryd was not in the water. He was not in the brush. He was nowhere. The search was eventually called off, leaving the father, Jaryd Atadero, to face a silence that would last for years. The grief of a parent in a missing 411 case is a unique kind of torture. There is no body to bury. There is no closure. There is only the endless what if. Alan spent years pushing the authorities, demanding answers that they did not have. He walked those trails until his boots wore thin, calling his son's name into the empty air. He looked at the trees and wondered if they were keeping a secret. He looked at the sky and wondered if it had simply reached down and taken his boy. The mountain remained silent, its granite face revealing nothing. 4 years passed. 4 years of snow and wind and the slow grind of the seasons. In June of 2003, 2 hikers were exploring a rugged, off-trail area of the mountain. They were high up, nearly 2,000 feet above the spot where Jaryd had vanished. This was an area of sheer cliffs and treacherous rock slides. It was a place where an experienced mountaineer would struggle to climb without ropes and gear. It was certainly not a place where a 6-year-old boy in a light jacket could wander off to in the middle of a freezing October night. And there, amidst the grey stones and the stunted alpine trees, they saw something that did not belong. A single, small hiking boot. It was Jaryd's shoe, but it was not weathered. It was not beaten by 4 years of Colorado winters and the blistering high-altitude sun. It looked almost new. The rubber still supple, the laces still intact. And then they found the rest. A fragment of a skull, a few teeth, and his red pullover. But the pullover was not just lying there in a heap. It was turned inside out. This is a recurring theme in these disappearances. The clothing found in impossible locations, often inverted. It is as if whatever took them was not interested in the clothes, but had to peel them off like a wrapper to get to what was inside. The location was the most disturbing part. To get to that ledge, a 6-year-old boy would have had to navigate miles of vertical terrain, crossing ridges and scaling cliffs that would stop an Olympic athlete. He would have had to do it in the middle of a freezing night, in total darkness, without leaving a single footprint or dropping a single thread from his jacket until he reached that final spot. It is physically impossible. Even the investigators were baffled. They couldn't explain how a child could have reached that altitude, or why his clothing was found in such a pristine yet bizarre state. Unless he did not walk there. Unless he was carried by something that doesn't use the ground the way we do. Think about the Glimmer. Think about a predator that does not hunt for food in the way we understand it, but for something else. Something that can move through the forest unseen, bypassing the senses of dogs and the technology of man. It picks its target. The lone child. The person at the back of the line. And it strikes in the gap between heartbeats. It carries its prey to the high places, the places where the air is thin and the world feels far away. It is a vertical predator, a creature of the heights that views our trails as a buffet line. And then, years later, it leaves a piece of the puzzle behind. It drops a shoe. It leaves a skull fragment. It is a taunt. It is a way of letting us know that it is still there, still watching, still waiting for the next person to wander too far from the group. The mountain isn't just a pile of rocks. It's a living, breathing entity with 1,000 eyes. We call it nature. A pretty word for a slaughterhouse. We take our cameras and our snacks and we walk into the jaws of the beast, thinking we are the masters of all we survey. We are not. We are guests who have forgotten how to be polite to the host. The missing 411 phenomena is not just about people getting lost. People get lost every day. They get found, or they leave a trail. This is about people who vanish in the presence of others. It is about the silent stroke that takes a person from a group and leaves nothing behind but a lingering sense of wrongness. It is about the clusters, the specific areas in our national parks where people disappear at a rate that defies statistical probability. The Comanche Peak Wilderness is one of those places. It is a place where the veil between our world and something much darker is thin. This is not an isolated incident. The patterns are everywhere if you know how to look. Take the case of DeOrr Kunz Jr. In July of 2015, a 2-year-old boy vanished from a campsite in Idaho. He was there 1 second, playing by the creek while his parents and grandfather were only feet away. And then he was gone. No tracks. No scent for the dogs. Thousands of acres were searched by thousands of people, and not a single scrap of his clothing was ever found. It is the same story, told in a different forest. The same sudden void. The same impossible silence. The same feeling that the earth itself had a mouth. We like to think we are at the top of the food chain. We build our cities and we pave our roads and we tell ourselves that the wild has been tamed and mapped and conquered. But when you step off the pavement and into the deep timber, the rules change. You are entering a kingdom that does not recognize your laws. You are walking into the house of something that has been hunting here since before the first fire was lit. It watches from the shimmering air. It waits in the silence between the wind. It knows your scent. It knows your pace. And it knows when you are not looking. When you go into the woods, stay on the trail. Keep your children within arm's reach. Do not let them run ahead, even for a second, because a second is all it takes for the Glimmer to find them. And if you feel that sudden chill, if the birds stop singing and the air starts to ripple like water in a glass, do not turn around. Do not run. Because by then, it is already too late. The mountain has already decided. Jaryd Atadero was just a boy in a red jacket who wanted to see the fisherman. Now, he is a ghost in the machinery of the wilderness. A warning to all of us who think we are safe behind our gear and our maps. The forest is old. It is patient. It has seen civilizations rise and fall, and it has swallowed them all. We are just the latest course in a meal that never ends. Be careful out there. The trees have eyes, and they are always hungry. Watch the shadows, and listen to the silence. If it gets too quiet, it means you are the only one left who doesn't know what is coming. Goodbye, Jaryd. We are still looking, but the mountain is still hiding you. Stay close to the light, while you still can.